Hi, BenDavid, are you there?
I am here. What's up, man?
How are you, bud? Thanks so much for talking with me today.
Hey, I like talking about Happily. It's great.
Yes. Well, yeah, congratulations on this film. I was fascinated by it, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was just incredibly original. So congrats on that.
Well, that's very nice. Thank you.
Yeah. So, doing a bit of research on your career, as a writer, you're a really big movie buff. I was like surprised to see that you're on Letterboxd and all of the and things of that nature. Can you give me a little bit of background about where sort of your passion for cinema has come from?
I mean, I wanted to make movies since I was maybe like 10 years old. I grew up just like movies just really made me happy. I was always fascinated by them. You start as a kid and you're like, oh, I really like Ninja Turtles and Lion King and whatever. And then suddenly I'm like a little bit older and I'm like watching weirder movies. I start kind of going down that road of figuring out the things you're passionate about. And I just think my whole life, the thing I've loved is that movies like combine every art form into one thing.
Yeah.
And there's a million ways to make a movie. Like, movies are as different as like, you look at something like Bottle Rocket next to Speed, next to Punch Drunk Love, and none of these things have anything in common.
Yeah.
And it's the thing about movies is like, if you're someone who has like pretty good imagination, it's like the most exciting format, I think, to make something. Does that make any sense?
Totally, completely. I think all of us film lovers can relate to exactly that sort of reasoning why we get involved with it in the first place.
I mean, it's the same thing though with like Happily, and the fact that everything from music to performances to locations to costumes are all like these exciting individual elements that add up to its own weird thing. It's like the movie without the songs is a different movie. The movie without these actors is a different movie. Like, I kind of like just the weird math of all of that.
Yeah. Well, and you said, and I'm gonna get into Happily, but you said the word songs. I wanted to talk about a movie of yours that you wrote that I've seen called Skip Trace with Jackie Chan. I have to talk about Jackie. I don't know how like you and the director get Jackie Chan to sing Adele's "Rolling in the Deep" in this movie.
Well, it's funny because I wasn't on set to write anything, so a lot of stuff changed, including in my script. I think it was Hold On Loosely he was supposed to sing,
okay,
if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And someone on set instead was like, what about Adele? And I think Jackie got excited about that. So when I first saw the movie, I'm like, I didn't know he was going to sing that. that was a wild experience for me.
Yeah, well, that movie's pretty fun, too. I mean, but now it sort of brings us to Happily. Can you talk about, for our audience, where the idea for this film came from?
Well, yeah, Happily to me is more of like, there's like some types of movies that I really love that I wanted to find a new way to make, which is, I love movies that feel like 90-minute Twilight Zone episodes.
Yeah.
I also love like really offbeat romantic movies like Wild at Heart, Phantom Thread, even Gone Girl, like movies that are like, have like a very romantic core, but they're also very odd.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to me, this concept and this approach was like a way for me to do that at the same time. And I also I've always really loved parents in movies who have almost no conflict, whether it's like the parents in Poltergeist or on the OC or Friday Night Lights, where you have these, they're not the leads, but they kind of have this bedrock foundation in a story because they like love each other so much and they have none of that, kind of contrived conflict, but doing a movie about those people was really interesting to me.
Yeah. I mean, well, and you talked about like it being like a 90-minute Twilight Zone episode, and what really worked for me was it just kept feeling like this building of tension and this building of like just awkwardness, which is sometimes people can love that and sometimes people can be frustrated by that. But I wanted to know, did you ever feel like you needed to maybe release more tension in the movie? Like, do you think like if people were giving you, notes, they were saying, well, shouldn't somebody like, go, murder everybody, or it turns into this violent slasher?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. There's a million different ways the movie could go.
Yeah.
But to me, this is the story I wanted to tell, and the reason I made it independently and for not a lot of money was because I really believed in, without spoiling it.
Yeah.
There's some bold choices you could say in how I resolve some of the stuff in the movie and in going in directions you probably wouldn't expect.
Yeah.
And that was exciting to me, even if it might not be everyone's favorite approach to it. I'm being very vague.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's choices that I made that could end up being polarizing, but in a way that to me is exciting.
Right.
Ideally, I feel like two people could really love this movie, but also have arguments about certain elements of it afterwards.
Right. And you certainly don't want people to be watching it saying, oh, well, I've seen this movie before. You need to kind of like give us something very fresh and new. And I think that's kind of what you achieved with the choices you made.
Yeah, because I would never call it just a horror movie per se, but you could take the first hour of this movie and then have a last half hour that is a little bit more Get Out in tone, or like it gets really fucked up.
Yeah.
And for me, I just didn't want to take in that direction. And, someone does die, but you could expect it to be a lot more violent than that, is all I'll say.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I want to dive into your sort of cast, especially bringing Stephen Root onto this film, because I am under the impression that Stephen Root never makes a bad film. So did you sort of feel, were you honored to have him on your film, or was it sort of a lot of pressure because you don't want to, misuse this fantastic character actor?
Well, it's really interesting because I think the original concept, people wanted me to get like an actual movie star for that part.
Really?
And to me, I'm like, I just want to get the best actor possible, and also someone who people love, who never plays the same thing twice. And Stephen Root was like one of the most exciting ideas for it. And when he said he wanted to do it, it was it's surreal. And then there's also elements of that character where you're like, well, how are we going to have conversations about this? I've never made a movie before. Is he going to think that like I'm an idiot who doesn't know what he's doing? He's worked with like every great director ever. Right. And then it was like great and easy. You have, your usual arc of insecurity, but it ends really well when the guy's as nice as Steven. Yeah. And he's just very talented. And everyone on set was really geeking out about him. I remember a point where Kerry caught me and Joel like watching Steven act, and she's like, "You look like little boys who are like really excited." Yeah. It's really fun to see him work.
Yeah. Well, and talk about those two leads, having Joel McHale and Kerry Bishe be your sort of, your two couples. Did you know you wanted to have the two of them right away, or was there sort of a process of figuring out?
No, that's actually one of the most exciting things about, in this case, because I made the movie smaller and I could just cast like actors who are really interesting. My only thing I wanted actors for that part who aren't the obvious choices, but would kill it. Because like Joel usually plays dicks,
right?
And when his agent called and suggested him, I instantly thought it could be really interesting if Joel liked the script and committed to who the character was. And Kerry's just one of the best actors ever. Like *Halt and Catch Fire* is my third favorite show of all time. Yeah. I could just spend all my press days just talking about how much I like *Halt and Catch Fire*.
Yep.
But when Kerry read the script and liked it, and my financier was like, "Oh," he's like, "I love *Halt and Catch Fire*." I knew I was in a really good position because, she has to do everything in this movie in terms of every type of tone or character, from anger to drama to comedy to silly moments to really sincere moments.
Yeah.
And she can do all that effortlessly. But my gut, I felt like the two of them would just have a really interesting energy together. Because I haven't seen a movie about these characters, and and just seeing Joel play that and her play that with him, I just thought could be really entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, they're fantastic. Their chemistry together is obviously spot on and perfect. The location of where you guys filmed this is kind of like a fortress, a labyrinth. Was it kind of a hard process to find this home, or was it
by far the hardest part of the movie?
Really?
Because, so, you have to spend half the movie in this house, and if it's not an interesting place to hang out in, the movie is just going to die the second you get there.
Yeah.
And we're making a movie for not much money at all, so we can't really afford great locations usually. So I saw 20 houses, and none of them were good enough.
Yeah.
So I started shooting without a house.
Wow.
And 8 days into my 20-day shoot, when I needed to be in the house on day 10, we found this one. And it had never been shot before or used. But after I shot my movie, Kenya Barris bought it and has a Netflix show he shoots in there.
Oh my God.
And you watch it, as they hired the same DP as my movie, and that does not look like the same thing.
That's awesome. That is.
But I also had a really good production designer, Jenny Muller. But at the end of the day, for this, it was just, I thought that one of the easiest ways for this movie to feel cheap was to not have great locations. And if anyone's ever thinking about the stuff that matters if you're making a small movie, is great locations go a long way.
Yeah, that's actually great advice, and I tend to notice those things when you're watching a movie. It's kind of it can make or break your film, honestly.
It's for me especially. I you got to get the right grocery store, you got to get the right restaurant, you got to get it right, all these things. But if you're making a gigantic movie, you can just pay for anything. But with this, it's you got to find the best thing you can and not feel like it's a compromise.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and then also too, I kind of want to go back to your writing process, because typically a lot of people see themselves or put themselves in a lot of their characters, but you have multiple characters with multiple personalities and different. Did you see yourself in any one particular individual, or was it just...
That's one of the fun things about this movie is I'm obviously not Tom.
Right.
So
right.
No one's going to watch the movie and think oh, this is some guy writing his autobiographical.
Right.
But for me, that was the fun thing about writing the script, was just capturing a bunch of completely different personalities and different levels of kind of contentment or anger or sarcasm or whatever, and then just getting a bunch of interesting and disparate actors to play those parts. There's Al Madrigal in the movie, dresses exactly like me as a joke, and I didn't know it was going to happen until he showed up. And there's photos of us on set with the same Vans shoes, same jeans, same T-shirt and button-up shirt over it. And my costume designer did it as a joke. So someone might watch it and think I'm supposed to be Arthur, which, he's a scientist with a microscope. That's not that bad.
Right. That's funny. Well, and it was also your first time directing too. So, and I know you've worked on Are You Afraid of the Dark, and you've written on...
But I made that after this, which is the hilarious thing.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's interesting. So talk about, your first time directing. What was the experience like? Was it everything you hoped for?
It was truly, in a way that's hard to explain, better than I could have ever hoped, because I feel like I learned lessons on smaller things that prepared me for when I was making the movie. Because I made a short, and I made a couple shorts, and then I directed a pilot for Machinima that never got picked up.
Yeah.
And doing any sort of process where you're in charge and you're dealing with actors and you're dealing with crew, you start to realize, oh, this approach works for me, this one does not. And if you can make mistakes and learn from them in a setting where no one's going to know, it's much better than making a movie.
Yeah.
And for me, making this, I felt like I'd figured out exactly how to get what I needed and how to communicate with people. and it really worked out.
Well, that's awesome. So I saw you tweet something about wearing a hazmat suit to see the new Godzilla movie, going out to a theater because you want to see it on the biggest screen. But for you as a director, if you had that magic wand to pick, your ideal, your dream project, what are you able to come up with a movie that you would pick?
Are you talking about like something that's an original or like an adaptation of a thing?
Let's say adaptation of a thing.
Okay, so if we were going to say adaptation of a thing, the bummer is like Metal Gear Solid would be my thing.
Yeah.
But my friend Jordan is very much doing that, so I have to make peace with it. Anything that I personally really want to make, I haven't. There's one thing I don't want to say because I'm really afraid no one else has thought of it, and I want to pitch it and have someone go, "Oh,
I'm stealing that."
Exactly how these things work. But that is the funny thing. It's like every time I find something that's like a dream project, it falls apart. I would like to remake Jingle All the Way with the same script, but be R-rated and like anti-consumerism.
Oh my God.
And the other thing I'll say is I've been trying to make a Bad Dudes movie for years, but no one can get the rights based on the video game from the 80s.
Oh my God, I love that
game.
I'll
mention those two because it's like no one else is really going to remake Jingle All the Way as an R-rated movie.
Yeah.
And also, I just want to do that movie completely straight-faced, but have it feel like it's a nihilistic comedy about consumerism.
I love it.
And then so it's like those things. It's like, yeah, and if someone can get the Bad Dudes rights, you can find me on Twitter or something.
Yeah,
because I do feel like I'm a bad enough dude to rescue the president.
Awesome. Well, BenDavid, thank you so much for talking with me today. Fantastic film. Congratulations. I think it's going to be a big hit for a lot of people.
I think some like the lesson I learned is like I sat down with like 90 actors and like maybe 87 of them really like the script, and the other 3 are like, but what about the ending and what about this and who is Goodman? And I'm like, so I think the audience is gonna be saying, some people will be mad at me, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah, no, I mean, at least we're gonna get people talking and enjoying new original films, original movies.
That part was off the record. I'm not saying that I want people to be mad watching my movie.
yeah, I don't think you do. So, well, thanks so much for talking with me today.
That was super fun.
Yeah, it's great. And we'll keep looking and hopefully get everybody to watch Happily.
All right, man. Take care, dude.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben.
All right, bye.
Bye.